Hello and welcome to part 3 of The Boy Who Grew Dragons. Did you have a think about what the dragon might look like based on that description that was at the end of the last chapter? And did your dragon that you imagine look like this one? So let's see what happens with Tom Tom the cat. Tom Tom is big for a cat. In fact, he's gargantuan. I'm pretty sure he's half tiger, and he's on the grumpy side. He's not a cuddly, sit on your lap and have a lovely stroke kind of cat. He's more of a guard cat. And I'd left the door wide open. So if you've ever seen Tom and Jerry cartoons, especially the ones with that little yellow canary, you can probably picture what happened next. But if not, then here's what I saw. My tiger-shaped cat leaping from the bed in a slow motion arc. My new dragon in mad panic mode, launching into the air, leaving a trail of scorch marks across the walls, his scales flaring a bright electric orange. Look at that cat leaping. Tom Tom, who'd obviously forgotten he was wingless and unable to fly, had very quickly come crashing down on my desk. He sent my rocket lamp, books and pens flying as he skittered across and landed in an undignified heap right on top of my remote control car. Apparently, not finished in his starring role in the new Tom Tom and Jerry show, the cat's claws hit the big red button on my remote. This fired up the shrieking siren and spinning lights, which sent him rocketing under my bed with an ear-splitting yowl. I stared at the door. There was no way my parents would sleep through this racket, and I wasn't sure Lolly would either. The little dragon flew upwards and crashed into my lampshade. His claws ripped through the paper of the shade as he scrabbled to hang on to the wire frame. For a moment, he swung there upside down, not quite knowing what to do, before heading for the shelf where all my Lego models were lined up. He knocked his way past model after model, and I watched in horror as hours of painstaking buildings tumbled to the ground. Crash! Bang! I lunged just as Mum had entered the room. I poked my head out, trying not to let my eyes drift over to the dragon perched on the shelf just behind the door. "What on earth is going on?" she hissed. Her eyes flicked to Lolly's door. Dad appeared behind her, looking like his hair had exploded on the top of his head and brandishing a slipper as though he thought we were being attacked. Although what help a pink fluffy slipper would be, I had no idea. "Sorry," I spluttered. Tom was attacking my King Kong and I had to save it." Mum frowned. I could tell she wasn't convinced. She tried to peer past me to see inside, but I wedged my foot against the door. "What's that smell?" she asked, wrinkling her nose. I sniffed and caught the faint, smoky tang in the air. As if on cue, the little dragon sent out another spark that crackled in the darkness of the room. "Nothing," I stammered. "Just, stinky cat smell. I'll give Tom Tom a bath tomorrow, I promise." Mum looked about to speak, but thankfully a well-timed scream from a grumpy at being woken Lolly sent her attention away from me and the dragon who'd just launched up onto the lampshade. She groaned and steered Dad down the hall. They disappeared into Lolly's room, Dad still clutching the slipper. Behind me, Tom Tom had given up. With eyes full of malice, he stalked back and forth, getting ready to pounce again. The little dragon was swooping and diving in dizzying circles now, clearly terrified. He kept sending out flurries of little sparks that rained down but thankfully fizzled out before they landed. I glared at Tom Tom. "Out!" I hissed, and herded the spitting ball of fury out onto the landing. As soon as the door had closed, the dragon flew towards me and I held out my arm for him to perch on. He was shaking, and as he pulled in his wings, I gently laid my hand across his back. His eyes were still fixed on the door as if he thought Tom Tom might come crashing back through at any second, and I held my breath until I heard Mum and Dad stumble back into their room. The little dragon's claws dug into my arm as if he was poised ready to spring at a moment's notice. I couldn't exactly stroke him like you would a cat. Well, any other cat other than Tom Tom, but I kept my hand resting there until he'd stopped shivering and relaxed his grip. "Sorry," I whispered. "We'll be more careful from now on." He stared up at me, his twinkling eyes looking right into me. It was like gazing into one of those crystal prisms where the light is scattered into a rainbow. Fragments of colour sparkled and danced around the dragon's almond-shaped irises. I could have looked into those eyes forever. Then, just for a second, his sharp little claws tightened on my arm again. "I promise," I whispered. The grip loosened. The tiny creature seemed satisfied that he'd made his point. His scales flickered and the fiery orange glow gradually returned to ruby red. It was only then that I took in the devastation that was my room. The scorch marks up the walls and the sparks that had left sizable black stains on the carpet. And the poo. I'd learned my first lesson about baby dragons that night. They poo a lot, especially when they're being attacked by a miniature tiger. When I woke up next morning, the first thing I did was swing my head over the edge of the bed and look underneath. And there he was, my dragon, curled up in the shoebox nest I'd fashioned for him, the loo roll expertly shredded into a cosy bed. His bright eyes were fixed on mine, his shimmering red body glowing like a hot ember. Yup, I had a dragon. I didn't need a groomable guinea pig or a dog who could dance or even a camouflaged lionfish. Nope. I had a dragon. Beat that, Liam. And okay, I admit he was small. You might even say titchy. Something I knew all about, being the smallest in my class. But it didn't seem to be bothering him. Maybe if I glowed like that and could fly, it wouldn't bother me so much either. I wondered how fast he'd grow, and suddenly thought of Lolly. She'd be a bite-sized snack for a growing dragon. As if to reassure me, the little dragon hopped towards my cheese plant, which isn't actually made of cheese, though how cool would that be for late-night snacks? And he started tearing chunks off it. And he's eating his plant. Phew, I laughed. Well, at least that's one thing I now know. You eat plants. Let's just hope I can fill you up on enough of those. The only question really was, how was I going to keep him? Because I was pretty sure a dragon wasn't on Mum's list of ideal house guests. In fact, although my mum and dad put up with quite a lot, looking around at the devastation in my room, I thought even they would object to this. I'd already had to hide Dad's old Batman comic, well, the sad charred remains of it, and 7 of my socks singed to smithereens after I'd used them as mittens to put out the sparks. And then, of course, there was the huge hole in Mum's best towel. Oh, and the endless ticking time bomb poo grenade that lurked here, there and everywhere. You see, apart from smelling like rotten fish wrapped in stinky cheese with sprinklings of burnt toast, dried out dragon poo is highly combustible, which means that it can explode without warning, something that I'd found out at about 4 o'clock in the morning. Let's just say that once you've woken up to find your bed splattered with detonated dragon droppings, you get really particular about cleaning them up and keep a close eye on where they land. At breakfast I sat next to Lolly with my dragon tucked away in my hoodie pocket. I could hear Mum and Dad upstairs, both reeling out their list of to-dos. It was beginning to sound like a competition of whose list was longest. I just hoped that none of those to-dos ended up coming my way. Now, Lolly may only be little, but she's not daft. She sees stuff. And if I've got a sweet in my mouth, even if I'm not chewing, she still knows. And if her hand goes out as quick as a flash demanding one too, well, I have no choice. So when I kept absent-mindedly fiddling with my pocket, I think she thought I had some sweets hidden in there. She leaned over and pulled at my hoodie, stretching the pocket open. "Lolla one, lolla one, lolla one," she gabbled. Before I could stop him, the dragon saw his chance for freedom and shot out. But in his excitement, he managed to sneeze and poo at the same time, shooting out fiery sparks from one end that scorched Lolly's toast and leaving a squelchy mess from the other all over my cornflakes. Alarmed by Lolly's shrieks of delight, he soared up to the ceiling light, dropping more well-timed poo bombs along the way, one of which perfectly met the sole of Dad's shoe as he strolled into the kitchen. If my dad had picked up any tips at our one and only ice skating lesson, he might have been fine. And if the table hadn't been there, he might have slid smoothly through and out the back door. But as it happened, he sort of folded over it like a crocodile's mouth shutting and landed with his face in Lolly's plate of mashed banana. At least Lolly thought it was funny. I quickly opened my pocket and the dragon zipped back in out of sight. Just in time too, as Mum came running in to see what all the noise was about. "What on earth is going on now?" she groaned, seeing all the mess. Now the good thing about Lolly is that because she can't talk much yet, you can blame quite a lot on her. And the best bit is she finds everything so funny she doesn't mind if Mum and Dad don't get cross with her because she's only little. A Lollybob was painting another banana picture and this pigeon flew in and ate it, I said. Lolly flapped her arms, launching another blob of banana that delicately splattered on Dad's nose and made her squeal again. Mum raised her eyes and sighed. Lolly giggled and stuck her 2 thumbs up, both covered in banana. "Lolly blobberlob," I said, laughing. She wiggled her banana-y fingers about like little puppets, which was pretty hysterical, and even Mum couldn't help smiling. I told you, we stick together, me and Lolly. Anyway, while Mum acted like a hyperactive octopus mopping up Dad, the floor and Lolly, I was able to escape, which was just as well, because I needed to get back to Grandad's garden, fast. I wonder why he needs to get back to Grandad's garden. We'll find out tomorrow.